Israeli warplanes roar over Syria once more. Explosions echo in Homs, Latakia, even the ancient city of Palmyra. Damascus calls it a flagrant breach of sovereignty. Israel calls it national security. Nearly 100 strikes this year alone. Even as fragile US-brokered talks try to pull Syria and Israel back from the brink. And now, a new twist. Turkey training thousands of Syrian troops under a fresh security pact. Escalation, diplomacy, and power plays collide as the battle for post-Assad Syria intensifies. Israel's warplanes have struck across Syria once again. The latest raids, reported on the night of September 9th, hit multiple targets across the country. According to Syrian state media Sana, Israeli fighter jets carried out a series of airstrikes in the vicinity of Homs, Latakia, and the ancient city of Palmyra. Damascus condemned what it calls a flagrant breach of sovereignty, while observers warn of rising escalation alongside fragile US-mediated peace talks. The Syrian Foreign Ministry in a statement said,
Israel's continuing and unprovoked attacks on Syria are part of a series of aggressive escalations pursued by Israel against Syrian territory. Israeli attacks are a direct threat to Syrian security and regional stability, and we reject any attempts to undermine its sovereignty or harm its national security.
The ministry also called on the international community, particularly the United Nations Security Council, to take a clear and firm stand to put an end to the Israeli attacks.
The United Nations Security Council should take a clear and firm stand to halt the attacks, which is violating both international law and the UN Charter.
Sana did not provide casualty figures, but said the attacks were part of a series of aggressive escalations pursued by Israel against Syrian territory. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a Britain-based monitoring group, reported that the Israeli strike near Homs targeted a military unit south of the city, while in Latakia, Israeli fighter jets hit a military barracks. Locals described hearing explosions and ambulances rushing to the site. There has been no immediate comment from Israel, but earlier this year, Defense Minister Israel Katz declared that Israeli forces operate day and night wherever necessary for national security. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Israel has carried out nearly 100 attacks in Syria so far this year, including 86 from the air and 11 ground operations, destroying some 135 sites and killing at least 61 people. The strikes come as Israel continues an expanded campaign across Syria since the fall of President Bashar al-Assad in December 2024. In the chaotic aftermath, Israel seized parts of the Mount Hermon buffer zone, undoing the 1974 disengagement lines that followed the Yom Kippur War. Earlier this month, Israeli forces also detained 7 people in Quneitra, telling AFP they were suspected of terrorist activity. Meanwhile, the political track remains alive, if fragile. Damascus and Jerusalem are engaged in US-mediated talks aimed at reducing tensions in southern Syria. On September 1st, Israel's Khan public broadcaster reported that Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer is set to meet Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani this week. In July, Israeli and Syrian officials held talks in Paris with US Special Envoy Tom Barrack, marking the first publicly confirmed meeting between Jerusalem and members of Syria's new government. Israel, for its part, insists its operations are necessary to prevent weapons from falling into the hands of extremist groups and to contain threats along its northern frontier. As Syria reels from the latest strikes, one reality is clear. Military escalation and diplomatic overtures are now unfolding side by side, a contradiction that leaves the future of Israel-Syria relations highly uncertain. Meanwhile, Turkey has begun training Syrian forces under a security agreement signed between the two countries in August. The Middle East Eye, citing several sources familiar with the issue, reported,
Around 300 Syrians, mostly soldiers, but also some police officers, are currently being trained at 2 bases in central and eastern Turkey. Ankara plans to train about 5,000 Syrian soldiers and police in the short term, with the number expected to rise to at least 20,000 over the medium to long term.
Last month, the Turkish Defense Ministry said the bilateral agreement would support Damascus in military training and cooperation, including consultancy and equipment procurement. The deal is seen as a first step towards restructuring Syria's armed forces, transferring expertise and supplying equipment to help Damascus build a modern military capable of responding to both internal and external threats. In July, Syria formally requested Turkish military assistance after Israeli airstrikes targeted Damascus and Swaida amid intercommunal violence between Druze and Bedouin tribes. Ankara and Damascus have also been discussing a broader defense pact that could involve Turkish troop deployments to at least 3 major Syrian bases. However, the newly signed training and consultancy agreement does not yet provide a framework for such deployments. At the same time, Turkish security forces have begun withdrawing from northern Aleppo, where they have been stationed for about 8 years as part of the Syria Task Force, which helped secure areas seized from the Islamic State group and Kurdish fighters. According to reports, the task force, largely made up of gendarmerie units under the Interior Ministry, has started evacuating bases. Equipment and supplies from these sites are being transferred to Turkey's Hatay, Gaziantep, and Kilis provinces.
Bases in Syrian border towns such as Azaz and Jarablus have already been evacuated and handed over to security forces affiliated with the new Syrian administration. Personnel and military hardware pulled back from Aleppo have been temporarily redeployed inside Turkey.
Meanwhile, concerns about an accidental clash between Turkey and Israel remain, despite a deconfliction mechanism in place.
Turkey is trying to harass us and drag us into a military confrontation that we do not fear, but do not want. Israel has been negotiating with Syrian leaders over security arrangements, but will not hesitate to use force if necessary.